Well, good morning. We'll shift gears. Thank you, Marcel, to weather, and it's as you'll see, I think a fairly straightforward outlook here as we look at this transition part of our season, and it definitely is in a little taste of fall here, at least this morning. For the past week, though, looking behind, it was a cooler than normal week over most of the state. On the left-hand side here, with our departures for the week ranging from, well, almost zero, so we're really close to normal in the southeastern corner, but several degrees cooler than normal as you move north and west from there, especially for portions of western and central upper Michigan, where we were as much as 4 or 5 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than normal. So the cooler than normal conditions that we saw during a lot of the second half of the season continued. There has been some up and down. On precipitation totals here for the week, on the right-hand side, most areas in the 1/2 to 1 inch category. That's the lighter and the darker shades of green. So a little bit below normal typically for this time of the year. However, there were a couple of exceptions, one major exception, and that if you look here in northwestern lower Michigan, you can see a large area of, well, certainly at least 2 inches, and then some embedded reds and browns in there. There was a very, very heavy area. Well, it was an episode of training thunderstorms moving over the same area repeatedly last Wednesday and Thursday, and some very, very heavy rainfall totals, some in excess of 6 inches, but there were common totals greater than 3 and 4 inches. And so, and interestingly, that was one of the drier parts of the state up until then. But again, it's never good to have to make up for those departures all at once. But in northwestern lower, they did that here earlier last week. So again, that's about a week behind. There was also some fairly significant rain once again in southeastern parts of the state, down parts of the Thumb and in, well, parts of the Detroit suburbs. Now, a theme here for much of the growing season is first too little water and too little rainfall early in the seasons. We all remember we had significant drought develop here early on, and then depending on location, late June, early July, we had a major changeover, and there was heavy rain, repeated heavy rain, especially during late July and August, and even into early September. And what you're looking at here now is a 6-month total for precipitation. And on the left-hand side, these are the actual observed totals. And you can see many of these areas here. The dark green is 20 inches or more. The yellows are actually 25 inches or more. And again, that is a lot of water. On the right-hand side are the departures from normal expressed in inches. But I think this tells, even though some of these areas come out close to average, if we look at that 6-month period, of course, it was anything but average. Many areas, again, too little water early and then way too much at the end. But if we look at the actual surplus or deficit here on the right-hand side, this tells, I think, a real story. And that is we had areas with still negative values and some departures or some below normal values in western and southwestern parts of the state. And then as you go north and east in the state, of course, we had surpluses. And note that the drier than normal areas that we did actually have show up in this statistic as you go west and south, large areas of the Corn Belt had significantly below normal precipitation this year. And of course, that's been a continuing, at least, topic of concern as we look at production this year and all of the supply and demand factors. But in terms of the supply, much of the Corn Belt was drier, significantly drier than normal, and southwestern lower Michigan is a part of that area geographically, but very, very different conditions, of course, as you move east, especially across southeastern and east central lower Michigan, where big surpluses, some cases more than 8 inches above normal in southeastern lower Michigan. Well, where are we headed? I mentioned it's a fairly straightforward forecast. We are in really, I think, in a period of transition. Jet stream pattern flow here. This is a chart that shows the jet stream projected here for basically for the next week. And what it indicates is that we are going to be in the transition from a troughing pattern, which is what we have right now with cool temperatures and cooler than normal weather across much of the Great Lakes region, to one of ridging. And you can see a little bit of that here with this brown color. There'll be a ridge building in here by later next week, and then probably beyond that as well. One of the big messages, though, I think even more significant, we look here on the right-hand side here. These are precipitation totals relative to normal. The greens are surpluses, and the yellow color here are deficits. And clearly, and very high confidence in this, we are in a period of drier than normal conditions, and that will continue probably for much of the next 1 to 2 weeks as we move ahead into the medium range. This morning, I mentioned a chilly start. It's beautiful conditions out there. Clear skies, a little bit of fog here and there, but you can see the values here. The red values in red here, these are the air temperatures across Michigan and surrounding areas, but generally in the 40s with some upper 30s across interior areas of northern lower Michigan. I did see a 36 or 35. That's enough to have some at least frost form in certain areas. It isn't a killing frost or freeze by any stretch of the, but it's a reminder of, again, our calendar. We're mid-September. That's not very well. It's somewhat typical of this time of the year, but it is a reminder that we are in September now and in a season of transition and moving towards cooler weather. And we'll see similar conditions tomorrow, maybe a couple degrees warmer than it was this morning, but still probably by tomorrow morning, some similar values that you see right here. So on the forecast map, our weather map here this morning with clear, calm conditions over most of the state, that's due to this big area of high pressure right across northern lower Michigan, the center of that. That's a Canadian air mass, cool, dry, and that's going to be with us for at least the next 36 to 48 hours. On the satellite down here in the lower left, I just threw this in here. There's a little bit of fog reported here or there. You also see here off the right side, this is Hurricane Lee, which has been with us for almost 2 weeks as a major hurricane. Fortunately, though, it's been over open water. But Lee, that's going to change over the next couple of days, and Lee's going to accelerate as it moves northward and probably make landfall in the Canadian Maritimes, either in Nova Scotia or in New Brunswick here later in the weekend. But the good news is that it is weakening. It's over cooler water. It will have no impact on us here in Michigan or the Great Lakes region, but there will be certainly some impacts as you move, even for portions of New England and then certainly into the Maritimes of Canada. And we'll see that on the weather map here in just a second. By tomorrow, not much change. High pressure slides off a few hundred miles to the east. And then the next weather system really to impact us here, you can see off to our west, it's a weak frontal boundary, and weak is I think the operative or the important qualifier here. There's not much moisture with this. This is not a big system, but we will see at least a threat for some scattered showers, maybe a couple rumbles of thunder beginning in western upper Michigan by later tomorrow. It will slowly move to the south and east during the day on Saturday and Sunday. But for most of the state, this is the next chance, really probably the only chance for precipitation in the upcoming week. 30–40% probability at most. And again, as I mentioned, moisture is limited. So where rain does fall, we're generally talking about less than a quarter of an inch. So this is not a major rainfall producer. The greatest threat of rainfall for most areas won't come till late Saturday or probably Sunday. And that would be the case for most of the lower peninsula, especially central and southern sections of lower Michigan. There might be some threat persisting into very early Monday morning, but most of the state should be done. And high pressure moves back in here for the beginning of the work week. And then beyond that, we are looking at, as we saw here just a second ago with the guidance, we are looking at a ridge building up over across central and eastern portions of North America. And that's going to mean a gradual warm up, a real warm up, and also continue dry. So that's, again, the drier than normal, and then with gradually warming conditions here as we move into next week. That's, I think, the real direction we're headed. Here's the map for Saturday. Again, there's not a whole lot of change between Friday and Saturday or Sunday, but this is the only chance, again, of precipitation likely in the upcoming week. So if we look in the gauge here for the upcoming 7 days through 7 o'clock next Thursday morning, most areas well less than a quarter of an inch, and if it does fall, it will be the system we just talked about here. But again, very, very limited in terms of any significant rainfall conditions expected, and probably beyond this as well. In the medium range, more of the same. On the left-hand side here, this is the forecast jet stream, and notice here, this is the important part, big ridge over eastern North America, sinking subsidence here, and so very, very high likelihood of warmer than normal mean temperatures. And also probably it shows Michigan a little bit close to a boundary or a gradient here between drier than normal conditions. This is a warmer and drier than normal forecast to me. I think fairly straightforward. The 8 to 14 day time frame, which goes beyond this into week 2, is similar, maybe a little bit, it has a little bit more precipitation in it, but I think warm and dry is definitely the direction we need to be thinking about here for the next 2 weeks. And again, for most of what we're dealing with and activity right now, that's probably not such a bad forecast. We will see likely some field dry down of maturing grain or acceleration of maturation, that type of thing. So it should be favorable for most outdoor work activities, especially for those eastern areas that have just been so wet here over the last several weeks. So warm and dry is the direction we're headed. And wrapping up here, summarizing here, beautiful conditions both today and tomorrow. Really, really great days to be outside and get some things done. A little cool. High temperatures both today and tomorrow, generally still remaining in the 60s. We'll probably go above 70 to the low 70s tomorrow in most areas. And then, again, the chance for a little bit of scattered rainfall activity for the weekend. And then once again, by the time we get to next week, fair, dry, and gradually warmer, as you can see. And then that's the theme, and certainly continuing into the medium range. And with that, we'll jump in. And it's hard to believe it seems like we started just yesterday, the growing season here, but our last virtual breakfast of the season here coming up next Thursday on the 21st, and we'll have Dr. Christy Sprague with us to talk about fall weed control options. And she's been, of course, with us before here this season, so don't miss that. Again, that's 1 week from today, and that's our last, hard to believe, our last virtual breakfast for the year. And with that, I'm going to hand off to Phil here for credits.